Today on Power Women of Queens, Lucia Dragos meets Claire Shulman, the former Queens Borough President who was the first woman to hold this position in Queens history.
How were you able to balance motherhood and career?
Well, I've done it, and you have to have the energy and you have to be a good organizer. You have to organize your time.
Then Lucia chats with 21st District Council member Julissa Ferreras Copeland, who in September 2014 was named one of Crane's 40 Under 40 for being a young, influential member of New York City politics.
Look, I'm not going to say that it's easy. There are hard times. There are times when I have to be at 5 evening events and I want to be with my son, and I haven't seen my son, 3 days in a row till 10 o'clock. But there is also a balance of having an incredible support system. My parents, really are invested in my success.
QPTV presents Power Women of Queens, a series that highlights the everyday female decision maker, political leader, manager, and scientist as the norm, not the exception. The women featured are everyday women, mothers, wives, sisters, and co-workers whose actions have contributed to the Queens community. Claire Shulman was Queens Borough President for 15 years. She was the first woman to hold this position in Queens history. As the highest-ranking elected official in a borough of over 2 million people, Ms. Shulman played a major role in a wide range of land use issues, the development of the city's expense and capital budgets, and worked with the mayor and other city officials to advance the interest of Queens and its residents. As borough president, Ms. Shulman played a major role in helping secure funding for 35,000 additional school seats in the Board of Education's 5-year capital plan. A major great personal significance was the successful completion in 2001 of the Queens Hospital Center. Ms. Shulman also, with her able staff, created many cultural institutions such as the Hall of Science, the Queens Museum of Art, and the Museum of the Moving Images.
Claire, thank you so much for joining me at Power Women of Queens program.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Now, the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. After reading your bio, you had this incredible journey filled with small steps, giant leaps. But what was that single step that set the course of your career?
Well, to tell you the truth, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was at Brooklyn College, which was part of the City University, and I almost 2 years. And I said, I'm going to be a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher. I want to be something else. And so I was riding in a trolley car. Now, you don't know what that is, but in those days, it was something that ran on tracks. And there was a sign up on the window, and it said, be a nurse, help the war effort. It was World War II. So I thought, gee, that's a great idea. I think I'll be a nurse. And that's what happened. I called Adelphi, and I told them I had 2 years worth of liberal arts credits, and if they gave me a bachelor's degree at the end of the nursing program, I would come. I was 17. That's called chutzpah. So, and they said, okay, come. So I went to Adelphi and I became a nurse. And I loved it. I loved it. And it taught me very, very quickly that I could do anything. Because during the war, nurses didn't have the fancy equipment that you have today. We had to make do with whatever was available. And we had to keep people alive doing it. And so I learned very, very quickly that I could do a lot of things. I had an imagination, and I had a lot of energy. And so that really was a beginning for me to know that, well, whatever I wanted to do, if I had the information, I could do it. And nursing taught me that, and I am forever grateful. And I enjoy doing it, and I was happy to help build a new hospital in 164th Street and Grand Central Parkway is the new Queens Hospital Center. And I was able to do that. And I did a lot of things because of my knowledge of health and medicine. When my children started to go to school, I joined the Mothers Club. In those days, it was called a Mothers Club. Oh, God. And so, of course, I learned everything there was to learn about public education because I had all this energy. So I became president of that. You know, usually what happens is nobody wants the job, so you end up getting it, right? So I became president of that group, and I learned everything there was to learn about public education in the state legislature and so on. And what happened was, the school my kids went to, PS 41 in Bayside, was a very old school. And I had a friend who was a lawyer, and I said, listen, let's see if we can't get this school fixed up. So we went to see this wonderful guy named Eugene Holt, who was head of school construction, and we told him about this poor old school that really needed some work, and we threatened to sue him as a slumlord. Well, in those days, nobody ever heard of suing anybody for a slumlord, but he was a nice guy, and he took it all really well, and by God, he did an enormous rehab on that building in 18 months. And that really is very unusual. And so, you know, the leadership in the community and the banks thought, oh boy, this gal is pretty hot stuff. Because all the real estate values jumped. So, and so they nominated me to be on the local planning board, and that's what happened.
You were not only the Queens Borough President for 16 years, but you were the first woman to hold that position in Queens' history. How did it make you feel to be such a pioneer?
I never thought of it that way, to tell you the truth. I thought of it as doing the job. And I learned very quickly, even though, you know, I was one of the first people to do that you could do, again, anything if you tried hard enough. And so I just went ahead and did it. But I learned that you had to, whatever you were doing, you had to learn everything there was to know about the subject. And I swear to you and all the young people, listen carefully, because if you know more than anybody else on that subject, you win. And so if you're serious and you want to do something for the community or the city and you really want the project to work, go in knowing everything there is to know. And pretty soon the agencies were afraid to come see me. So they would have meetings before they came to see me, and to learn everything there was so that they could compete. The other thing that I should tell you, and this is for students who really want to be in government, get the best staff. You cannot do what I did alone. You have to have the best people working for you, and I had the best staff.
How were you able to balance motherhood and career?
Well, I've done it, and you have to have the energy, and you have to be a good organizer. You have to organize your time so that you get everything done that you want to get done in a certain amount of time. So you really have to do that. And you can. I mean, my daughter, look at that. I mean, you know, my daughter has two children, and she...
An incredible career.
She flew around the world and managed to raise two wonderful children. Just great. So, I mean, if you manage to organize your time in a way that allows you to do everything, you can.
You set the tone for the next generation of women Queens Borough presidents, because after you, we only had women borough presidents. What does it take for a woman to achieve that?
Well, it's different today than when I became borough president. Women now are coming into their own, and they serve as judges, and they serve in the state legislature and the city and the assembly. And look, Hillary is running for president. And so, you know, women have it's open for women today. It's a little different. But again, if you want that, if that's what you're after, know everything there is about the job, there is to know about the job. Because if you're going to debate somebody that you're running against, you better know what it is you're doing and what the job entails and how you intend to be successful in that job. So that, you know, and the women are pretty smart. I mean, they're, as a matter of fact, women do a good job in administrative positions like this because women, for the most part, are detail-oriented. And they're not always looking to see where they're going next before they finish the job. So, excuse me, guys, but that's true.
What is the other quality that young people need?
Well, you have to know what your mission is. What is it that you want to do? If you're going to work hard, what do you want to accomplish? And then go after it. And another thing that young people ought to know is that if you start a project, finish it. So many times in government, somebody comes in with a good idea, it lasts for about 6 months, they drop it because something else has arisen, and the project dies. Or somebody else in middle management will take the project over. If you're going to start a project, it's worthwhile, finish it. Finish it. And don't let the obstacles stand in your way. If the project is worth doing, do it.
To finish on a fun note, reading your bio, I read a piece of fun trivia. You helped the Queens Zoo obtain their bald eagle. How that came about?
No, that's not the whole story. The whole story is I had put money into upgrading the zoo and making it, you know, a really good place with the farm right across the road. And the mayor had a deputy, a first deputy, who was trying to hold the Queen Zoo back so that he could get the Brooklyn Zoo, the Prospect Park Zoo, in for some other reason. I never could figure it out. And my zoo was ready to go, and I didn't want to wait for Brooklyn. Why did I have to wait for Brooklyn? Because the guy came from Brooklyn, obviously. And so I can't go through all the details, but there were quite a few. And Queens won, and we went forward with the zoo. And so the people in the zoo seemed to think that it was a good idea to name this American bald eagle. There was a female in the zoo. The only way they could keep a bald eagle was if one of the wings were affected. They were broken. She couldn't fly. And so they had an open area for this wonderful, huge bald eagle. And they named it Claire. And then somewhere along the line, further down the road, somebody said, well, Claire looks lonely. Let's get another bald eagle. And they got one who was not as big and gorgeous as the Claire. But we now had 2 bald eagles in the zoo. And they were like, it was an outdoor place for them because they couldn't fly. So they had a wonderful place to live. And Claire and Mel were very comfortable and very happy. And I'm sorry to say they didn't have any babies.
Oh.
Anyway, that's Mel and Claire at the zoo.
Well, Claire, thank you so much for joining me. It was such a pleasure and honor to meet you.
Well, listen, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for thinking of me. That's very kind of you.
You're very welcome.
Coming up next.
Because no one says, can a man have it all? You know, no one questions that of a man.
Julissa Ferraris Copeland is the first woman, the first person of color, and the youngest member to head the New York City Council's Financial Committee, which oversees New York City's budget of $78 billion. With her election to the 21st Council District in 2009, Julissa became the first Latina elected to political office in Queens. A variety of organizations have benefited from Julissa's service and leadership. For her tireless efforts, Julissa has been honored by numerous communities and civic organizations. As the only child of immigrants from the Dominican Republic, Julissa is committed to the rights of all New Yorkers, with a particular emphasis on the growing immigrant community. A native New Yorker, Julissa grew up in Corona and is currently residing in East Elmhurst.
I read your bio and I'm so impressed. You're so young, so accomplished, and you were, I want to read it, I don't want to miss anything. You were named one of City and State's 40 under 40 for being a young, influential member of New York City politics. And not only that, but you're the first woman, first person of color, and the youngest member to be elected finance chair. That must be feeling great to be a pioneer.
Well, it's a great honor. But I also understand that it reminds me that, you know, women still have challenges and there's still a lot of opportunities for women to break the glass ceiling or to get into opportunities. For me, when I was given that honor through the speaker, it's something that the speaker chooses. I understood the incredible responsibility, but also understanding that I would be bringing a new perspective to that position was really the most exciting part.
Your first job at age 19 after college was the director of the Beacon program.
Yes.
What have you learned from this experience, and did that set the course of your career later?
So the Hannock Corona Beacon absolutely gave me, and it's still a job that I reference, right? Like, so now I'm finance chair, and I remember experiences either that families went through or that the young people went through, or things or challenges that I needed to overcome as a director. And I'm able to kind of go back and remember that experience and bring it forward into now being finance chair. I was able to work with amazing families, understand the struggles that many New York families have running this after school program, from education or just moms trying to serve, you know, to be able to have a safe space for their children while they were in school, to continue their school day while mothers were working 2 and 3 jobs. I think is very important. And for families in Corona, I was able to provide that stability. But it also taught me the point of budgeting, right? You know, I always wanted to be able to include as many young families as I could. However, I needed to have a budget to be able to reflect that. So to be able to knock on doors and have corporate sponsorship and work with other organizations, find in-kind contributions, it really gave me the perspective that I needed. So I was very, very lucky to be employed by the Hannock Corona Beacon at such a young age.
Well, now on a personal note, I'm a mom, and my son, 2 years in a row, he's in Hannock in the after-school program and the summer camp, and I can tell you it helps tremendously.
Of
It
course.
just lifts off your shoulder the pressure that you know that you have a after-school program, your son to go to, or child, and then summer camp.
And it's peace of mind, and what it is allowing is for you to be able to grow as a professional, where you know your son is in a safe space, so you have to go to meetings or you have to cover stories, you can do that. And understand that your son is at high quality programs. So as finance chair, how I bring all that is that when I have the opportunity every fiscal year to say, do we need to add more money to after school programming? I know firsthand that we absolutely do.
Now, was there any defining moment when you decided you wanted to go into politics, or was more natural
You know, there
progression?
was a defining moment. I got to be honest. The average woman has to be asked 7 times to run for office before she says yes.
And the men?
And the men, like immediately, they just wake up and say, I want to run for office. And, you know, everyone's going to vote for me. So it's different. For women, it's very different. And I'm not going to say that I was special. The same thing happened to me. I was like, I don't know. I'd rather be in the back and help and move. And I was a chief of staff. And then there was a point where I heard the people that were running for office in the community, and they were all men. And I looked and I was like, I can absolutely do this job much better than them. I'm totally in. So it was like that moment of, wait a minute, like, how could I not think that I can do this job when I've been doing it for so many years as a chief of staff? So that really kind of pushed me along. But I had a lot of people in the community asking me to run, pushing me to run. So it was like the perfect moment in that time for me to be able to do that.
What do you think they were seeing in you that they thought, okay, she'll be a perfect representative of our community? What skills?
Yeah, I've been working in the community since I was 14 years old, right? I was the NAACP Youth Council president. I've been in the community helping people become United States citizens, volunteer. I did a lot of volunteer work, and I think it was the tenacity, right? A lot of young people my age that were going to college and professionals, would move out of Corona, right? They're like, I want to get out of the neighborhood that I grew up in. But I definitely wanted to stay, and I knew that there were things that we needed to change and improve here.
Now you said at age 14. So
Yeah.
let's say now a girl is age 14 and she wants to get involved in politics. What do you think she should start doing now? Volunteering?
I think
one thing?
volunteering is the number one thing. And oftentimes, again, because we have to ask women so many times, I want women to think about politics, not necessarily by what we see on TV, and sometimes people get discouraged, right?
Right.
Because you see like the 2%, which is whatever all the bad things that are happening.
Yes.
But politics is a science. It really is the opportunity to work with people, right? And to make
Right.
changes and be a catalyst for change. We do that every day. We do that at home. There's politics at home. But ask your kids who they need to get money from. They
Yes.
know. So they know who the finance
Yes.
chair is in the house. You have
At
to
work.
At work, women do it all the time. They do it for school. They do it to
Yeah.
advocate for their children. So if we're advocating for children, that means you have all the abilities to be an elected official. There isn't a special, skill that you have to have other than really having a passion for the community and for the betterment of our community. I think if you're an advocate and you're passionate at what you do, then you have the skill set to be an elected official.
Right. Now going back, you said that you were seeing mostly men
Yes.
in politics. Do you think that that is one reason why women get discouraged to get into politics? And how can we change that? Now we have women like you. Do you think other women in leadership positions and in politics,
I
what
get it.
can they do to?
I think it's important, right? I understand how my role is important. I think there are more and more women that approach me that say, oh, I want to do this. How can I do this? So I'm becoming a mentor for many women. So I understand that my role is not only important as finance chair, but how I do this job is something that will influence a lot of young people. We have great interns. If anybody wants to get involved in politics specifically, and especially women, I would say young girls volunteer. Volunteer in your community, in the library, in the hospital, volunteer. Because that volunteer experience is what you will take with you forever, right? You'll be
Right.
able to reference that.
Right.
But also volunteer in a campaign. Go into the campaign. And sometimes, like everyone starts, you don't work with the candidate right away. Sometimes it's about, making calls, sweeping up the campaign office, ordering the donuts, ordering the pizza. But that's all part of the campaign experience. Because if you can't campaign, that is the magic to getting into office. Sometimes people see the elected office, they see the chair, they see the positions. But there was a lot of 5 o'clock in the morning train stations getting my message out. I ran in a special election. It was February. It was freezing. I had to go door to door. There's a lot of that happens before, but it's totally doable. I think that the two things, yes, there aren't enough women for women to be inspired to run for office. I think there's this challenge where they feel that they have to choose between their personal lives and where their
Yes.
personal lives are in those 2030s, right? So while men are making decisions to run for office and do amazing things, women are trying to balance all that.
Yes.
And the pressures of our culture. So as a young Latina, oftentimes we're kind of pressured in different ways of, you're 20 something and you're not married yet,
Yes.
those are the
I come from the
realities.
same background,
Exactly.
yes.
So as immigrants, we have the experience that our mothers had is very different. My mother
Right.
was married at 19 years old. I got married at 37. And I had my son, and trust me, I think I'm an even better parent now as an adult
Yes.
or an older adult having my children, and nothing happened. He's perfectly healthy, bouncy, and wonderful, and I was able to accomplish those things. But I do believe there's a way to balance that. You don't have to give up one or choose between one or the other.
Right.
But or feel panicked if I'm not married by 28. Oh my God, the sky's
Yes.
gonna fall. No, it's gonna be fine.
Well, now speaking of that, we often hear people say, women cannot have all, women can't have it all. Do you think it's true?
I really don't accept that. I don't accept it because no one says, can a man have it all? No
Right.
one questions that of a man.
Right.
I think that is like a man's question to a woman, right? No, I believe that, look, I'm not gonna say that it's easy. There are hard times. There are times when I have to be at 5 evening events and I want to be with my son, and I haven't seen my son, 3 days in a row till 10 o'clock. But there is also a balance of having an incredible support system. My parents, really are invested in my success. I just think it's an unfair question to ask. I think you can have different things. It's ebbs and flows. Sometimes you focus on your career and your family, you know, not less so, but in a different way. And then you have all the time to spend with your family, and you kind of are able to balance your career.
Well, now we kind of overlapped what I wanted to ask you, but you became mother.
Yes.
How that changed balancing motherhood and career?
It's been incredibly, I think, rewarding, because I can now really understand women that are working and have a family. It's been an opportunity for me to experience that firsthand. I love being a mother. It's probably the best title I've ever had. So, and I've had some great titles, but being mom is the best title I've ever had. And Julian is amazing. I have a 2-year-old, but the reality is I was pregnant and negotiated a Willets Point deal and a major deal for the USTA, billions of dollars that will be generated in our community. And I gave birth and was back at work 2 weeks later.
And you performed in the legislative acts, which I saw
you. And I performed in the legislative acts soon after giving birth. So it's also about being healthy. I felt like, you know, I needed to make sure that I was healthy and that my baby understood that I was connecting with him. But I also needed some adult time, right? Like, it's good to have a good mix of mommy time, and I could be an adult and I could be at work. Right. And the council was incredibly supportive. The members were amazing through that process.
Again, about the support system, it's very important.
Very important.
Now, do you have a working mom's guilt?
Yes, every morning. I'm not gonna lie, every morning.
Okay, you're human.
Yeah, I'm a human being. Every morning, you know, when I have to drop my son off and I give him a kiss on his cheek and I just want to stay with him and play blocks with him. But I also understand that what I am doing is important for him.
It's and very important for the community, for everybody else.
For everybody's children, right? I work for everyone's children's future. So I understand. And I want Julian to be proud of his mom. I want him to look back and say, you know, well, by then he'll be Googling me and be able to say, wow, Mom, you did all those things.
Yes.
So that's important too.
Yes. Well, what is the best advice you ever got?
That's a great question. The best advice, I feel like I get good advice all the time. But the best advice that I ever got was to not be so tough on myself. I'm very critical. I think women tend to do that. Our autopilot is, you know, am I good enough? Am I present? Am I doing this right? What could I do better? And we're constantly trying to do more and do better.
Outperform ourselves.
And yeah, we're doing great. We're doing amazing, and it's okay. And what we've accomplished is good.
You're doing a great job with your career, and I wish you success. Thank you so much for joining me. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you for sharing. I love the story about your son. That was very special. Thank you.
You're welcome.